Welcome back, everybody. My guest is Ken Berry, former All-Star center fielder, Major League Baseball, 26-year coach and mentor in the minor leagues. Now, Kenny, we were talking about your playing days. Some of the things that I'd be interested in knowing was, what did you take out of being a player and observing, what happened with coaches, how they treated you, what motivated you, what made you want to play for a coach. What are some of those things that you took as being a player and then incorporated those into your method of coaching?
Well, as I mentioned before, I think I tried to take the positive approach, Chuck Tanner, implement Del Crandall's delayed steal, took all of Eddie Stanky's things that he taught me about the game that would make a difference in, not giving up outs. And then the hard part, I know where you're heading there as far as the manager, but when you're in the minor leagues, you have a manager and that's it. When we played, they didn't have any coaches. It's the manager, period.
Mm-hmm.
So he was responsible for running the game, doing all the practices, and keeping track of all the guys. So he had his hands full. So it wasn't like, you could really draw from him a lot because he's just trying to get by sometimes. And practically it's kind of like you had to drive the bus, so it was kind of hectic. Now, when it got to AAA, we had a guy named Ted Beard that was an ex-outfielder and center fielder, and he played in Indianapolis, and then he decided to make his home there. He didn't make it to the big leagues, but he was a really good player, and he was our coach. But Ted was kind of one of those guys that you never knew he was there. He was like your credenza behind you. That he never said anything, so it was kind of quiet. He would just pat you on the back if you did something good, and that was about it. So I really didn't take anything. And when you got to the big leagues, we were very limited as far as the input that we got from coaches. When I signed to play with the White Sox, I went to my first spring training. I was the third baseman. So I'm down at third base. The fields down there were very sandy. And I mean, this is not an excuse because I was a decent third baseman or they wouldn't have signed me. So Les Moss, who managed me in the minor leagues 2 years and then part of a year in the big leagues, he always called me Hot Dog. And he go, Hot Dog, catch this one. And he put a little spin on it, put a little extra something one way or the other. And then I'm down there in third base and I'm moving around. Well, as you move around the sandy footing, you got a lot of divots. I mean, they're big, 4 or 5 inches deep in some cases. So now I'm taking balls off my shins, off my elbows and my chest. And they said, hey, this is about 2 weeks, 10 days into spring training. This is when you were down there for about 6 weeks. They said, go see that guy out there in center field. So I looked out there and so I said, okay. So I went out there and there were a few outfielders out there with this older guy who had turned out to be actually 83.
Wow.
He had one leg about 4 or 5. You know how you see people that have a hip problem or a back problem?
Yeah.
He had one leg about 4 or 5 inches shorter than the other one. And if he was a girl, you would have named him Eileen. You got that one, Joe?
I'll use that in my next book.
Yeah, there you go. So I get out there and I heard the story about him, which was enough to get me fired up my entire career wanting to do it. I never did it. But they said that he was the only outfielder and the center fielder to ever catch a foul ball. So I kind of spun that around in my brain. I'm going, man, this guy must have really been fast. Or he said, yeah, my left fielder couldn't catch a cold. He said, and I had a dead pull hitter at the plate. He said, so I was playing way over almost to left field. And so the ball went up, and I ran over in the foul territory and caught it. I said, okay, so that explained, how he did it. So now you mentioned to me earlier you wanted to hear about maybe some of how the instructors worked with you. Well, his instructions were this. Now he's 83, but this is the funniest part. How do you visualize a coach that's on the field working with you? Is he going to be in a uniform? Why, sure. I was never not in a uniform when I was on the field. Mm-hmm. This guy had a coat and a tie. He had a suit on. And he's out there leaning to the right. And the fungo hitter, the guy throws the ball up and hits the ball, is called a fungo hitter. He's hitting the ball, and Mostel, Johnny, is saying, all right, Bear. Now, this is the old term. Rowdy Dow, the old shaker. Go get it, Bear. Go get it. And so I go get it. He said, I don't want to go, Bear. I don't want to. And that was the instruction that I got. I never got any instruction.
Oh,
I was a wide receiver who loved to catch passes, and catching baseballs, piece of cake. I loved it.
That's kind of interesting that you make that type of an analogy, because you watch Patrick Mahomes now, who's our star quarterback here with the Chiefs, and
I know who he is.
Yeah, he
throws sidearm, he throws underhand, throws overhand 3/4. I got him.
Yeah, because he was a great shortstop,
Yeah, exactly.
and he learned to throw that way. So throwing a football is no big deal. Throwing it the same way, it's interesting that you talk about, the skill sets that maybe you had in football that lend themselves well to an outfielder's position. So, well, that. Now, who was your coach then? That year, the manager, first year when they moved you from third base into the outfield.
Dick Kinnaman. He was an old catcher, a smoker. Most of them were.
Yeah.
Smoker, and he was an ex-Marine. And you talk about the guy you did not want to make him mad at you. I never had any problem with any of my managers getting mad at me, I don't think, except Lopez. One time when I was trying to throw people out, I was missing the cutoff man. And as I mentioned earlier, we made $7,500. So by the time I paid my rent, which is about $500 a month, and that's $2,500 right there. And then they took out taxes. That knocked off another, $1,500 or so. I'm down to just not very much money. So he calls me in the office. He says, next time you miss a cutoff, man, he said, just bring $100 check in or $100 bill. I don't care which one, and put it on my desk here. Well, I came in and my foot slipped. It was wet. And, I'm making an excuse, but I remember well, I launched one that must have missed a cutoff guy by 40 feet. And right away, my billfold jumped off right out of my locker in the locker room. And so I went in the next day and paid him. And the next time I came up and I had a play at home plate, I threw it and almost hit our second baseman in the head standing on second base. But I didn't throw it too high.
Oh, that's great. That's great. How would you classify yourself as a manager or as a coach when you finally did move into that role? Were you somebody you think people really enjoyed playing for?
Oh yeah, I think so, because I never ever took a situation and said, well, the score's tied in the 8th inning and the guy's on first, we're going to bunt him over. That was never the way I played. We were liable to do anything. I had a situation in Appleton, Wisconsin, when I managed for the Royals with their Class A team. They had a big guy probably from Dominican or wherever on the mound, and he didn't ever check the runner at third base, and then he would wind up. And so our center fielder was Kenny Jackson. He had 44 doubles and broke a record, I think, for either the team or the league doubles that year. And our dugouts in Appleton were built more for guys from Japan, short guys, not guys like us over here. And so I walked over to my guy at third base. I said, "Hey, can you steal home here?" I said, "You ready?" He said, "Yeah, I guess." And I said, "Well, get a bigger lead. And when the guy looks in for the sign, start walking. And when he starts into his windup, take off, and you should be able to steal home. And this is a winning run late in the game." And so he does, and he did. And the guy threw the ball off the screen behind the catcher, and Kenny Jackson jumped up. He was so excited we won the game. He jumped up and knocked himself out on the dugout top. See, these are just little funny stories that you can't forget about them.
Well, that really does happen when you're a coach. In the book, I do relate a story about just a terrific young kid we had from Colorado that was practicing with us. He had to redshirt his freshman year. He wasn't academically eligible, but I don't know if you remember the story or not, but we were playing. He was coming down court in practice.
Yeah.
In a fast break type situation, somebody threw
his
the ball.
Finger.
Hit his finger. His finger just went.
My finger.
He kept screaming. He's screaming, my finger. And so I go out to try and help him, and he jumps onto my chest, and bites my shoulder.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm going, holy crap, what's this?
My shoulder.
I kept screaming, my shoulder, and we looked like dancing partners out there. He's screaming, my finger, and he's biting me, and I'm going, my shoulder.
Yeah.
You never do forget those types of things. And
see, he really liked you, so that he went towards you. He immediately gravitated to the coach.
Yeah, I guess. Did you have favorite players that you coached, had an opportunity to do that? And was there a difference from the guys that you coached that actually did make it to the majors versus guys that didn't?
Well, probably the two biggest things that are contributing factors with the guys that made it and the guys that didn't, a lot of it was the ability to adjust to the game and make adjustments. And when they saw a pitcher do something, they picked up on it right away, and they knew what he was going to do. So they were ahead of him rather than going up there and taking two at bats and going, "Oh yeah, I remember this guy. We faced him last week," and the guy didn't even remember it at the time. But probably my favorite story that I tell is I've been a roving instructor, a hitting instructor, a coach, and I'm given the coaching, the managing job for the White Sox in Birmingham, Alabama, Double-A. So there are a lot of prospects in the White Sox organization, and I was fortunate to get a few of them. Robin Ventura was my third baseman.
Mm-hmm.
Richie Amaral, who played with the White Sox a little bit and played with Seattle, was my second baseman. And Craig Graybeck, who was my shortstop. Now, the White Sox wanted Graybeck and Amaral to trade off so they could see if both of them could go to the big leagues and play in the big leagues and play short and second in case they needed a flip-flop or they had a utility situation. That's what they were trying to find out.
Mm-hmm.
So Graybeck was an interesting guy because the guy could hit the golf ball 300 yards and he could hit a few home runs. He was 5'6", 145 pounds. Now, you look at him, you go, no, this guy, he can't be all that great. He had the best arm on the team. He was very intelligent. He had great instincts, and he was one of our best situational hitters. So I'm looking for a fourth place hitter. Come out of spring training, I wasn't sold on my fourth place hitter. I had a big donkey first baseman and a big left hand hitting catcher, but they weren't going to be what I wanted. Robin was a natural third place hitter because he made great contact and, could put the ball in play. So I could hit and run on a 3-1 count. I could start the runners on a 3-2 count. I didn't worry about him striking out. I had Amaral and CL Pennygar, who was my center fielder. They could both run. So they were hitting 1 and 2. And so I said, heck with it. I'm going to put Graybeck and hit him fourth. Okay, 5'6" and 145 pounds.
They probably thought you were nuts.
I don't know if anybody thought I was nuts, but when the year was over, he had 87 RBIs. He was our MVP.
That's true.
Now, he comes in the middle of August. I'm in the office, and he comes in. The guys are just going out on the field. He said, Skip, he said, if I lose another pound, I'm going under 140. I said, Graby, go out there in the clubhouse and sit down and watch TV or do whatever you want to do every day until this season's over, and just stay in there until it's time to go out and stretch and get ready for the game. So it's okay. So he didn't go under 140. That was one of my better managerial decisions. But now he and Robin both go to the big leagues. And during our year there, Robin got hurt. Graybeck, playing short and second with Amaral, goes to third and plays 19 games at third base and is better than Ventura.
Wow.
And then the next year, Frank Thomas comes in. And of course, I think I'll ask you this question. Do you know what Frank Thomas's nickname was?
Beast. I don't know.
The Big Hurt. Okay.
Well, he was big.
So now Graybeck's nickname was the Little Hurt. That was kind of cool because they both went to the big leagues. I think Graybeck stayed for 15 years.
Wow.
And here's this little bitty guy. Nobody expected him probably to make it, and he stayed around for 15 years. So, they're just little things like that where you see a guy that I don't care how big he is or, how little he is. I want to see, can he play the game?
Yeah.
Does he? And instincts, I think instincts, and you would agree with this, I'm sure, instincts in any sport will offset a lot of, okay, you're not quite fast enough. You're not quite this. You're not quite that. If you got good instincts, you can help a team win.
Yeah. It kind of sounds like one of the concepts that I have in the book that I talk about that kind of frustrated me when I was coaching was players make plays, and that happens in all sports. I know my wife would, but I just come home and I say, we need some players who can make plays. And she just didn't understand that. I could not explain it to her.
Yeah.
And probably because I'm just not good at communicating at times, especially with her. But, there are people that just, when you have to have something done, they do it. And it doesn't matter what it is. They just do it. And I was frustrated in that I didn't do a good job of either coaching that or recruiting it because we didn't have many guys. And it had nothing to do with the players themselves. They were great kids. They played hard. They gave you everything they had. But when it came down to a situation where you needed a steal or you needed a rebound or whatever, we didn't have very many of those guys that would step up and actually make that play.
Execute. Yeah.
And so, and it sounds like you had some of those that you were, in a position.
Well, you had, this is another thing. I was drawing a comparison because when we talked, you said that, you were interested in a few things. And one of the things that struck me is you played 2 games a week, maybe 3 every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
We played 162 games in 150 days. So we got a game. We played usually every day. And sometimes we played doubleheaders on Sunday after a night game on Saturday.
Yeah.
And so, that was back before they got all this travel stuff and taking care of the guys. And, you need to give them a rest. And, back then, if Eddie Stanky, if you went and said, Skip, I need a day off, he would have just laughed and fined you $100 and said it'll be $200 if you don't get out of my office. That sort of thing. It just you didn't ask for a day off. When you were the starting center fielder, you were the starting center fielder, and if you got hurt bad enough, maybe there's a bone sticking out or something, but you weren't coming out of the lineup.
Yeah. Kenny, one thing that I was interested in knowing was, I know in my book, I talk about developing the whole person. I really felt like that was something that I was responsible for, being the head coach, was not only bring them in and teach them the skills and whatever to help them be better basketball players, but, I really feel like it's the coach's position to make them better people. And did you have opportunities to do that, or was that something that just wasn't part of the script in your coaching experience?
Well, I was a very young Christian at the time, because when I went through a divorce when I was just getting out of baseball. 5 years later, I got into baseball as a coach, and I obviously was a rookie coach, and I was a rookie at becoming a Christian. I was a rookie at how do I handle it. And I think that probably the main thing I tried to do was I tried to be there if anybody needed anything, and they ran into some problems. I was just trying to help as much as I could, but I tried to lead, by example. I tried not to swear. I didn't have that much of a problem, but every now and then, I'd lose it like any person does.
We do.
But I didn't do that. I was able not to do that until we had one little situation in up in oh darn it, not Burn. It was Oakland. Anyway, just north of Birmingham. They were our arch rivals. And if you remember Don Mincher, he played first base for the Twins. And he was in the big leagues for 10 or 12 years. He was part owner of their team up there. And he was also the guy that did the play-by-play on the radio. So we go up there to play. The first night, my right fielder hits a 3-run home run that clearly went out of the park fair. It was hooking, but it was way fair when it left. And then, of course, it was probably 400 foot, and it was 300 down the line. So the umpire's running down with both arms stuck out, waiting to make a decision. Well, he made the wrong one. And then we ended up having a situation where the guy hits a ground ball too short, throws it to the second baseman who can't get it out of his glove. My runner slides in to break up a double play. He breaks it up. And when he's done sliding, he is actually lying on second base. So he didn't go out of the baseline. The umpire runs over and he goes, "You're out," and out at first base, because he's out at second because he interfered or whatever the rule is. Okay, so now I got it again. And then the next night, we're ahead 3-1 in about the third or fourth inning, and I've got my ace pitching. And I had Alex Fernandez was one of my pitchers who came down there he came right out of Miami, I think, University of Miami. Comes up. My boss told me, he said, "Hey, you're going to pitch Alex. He's going to get 80 pitches, and then he's out of the game because he's going to the big leagues in about 2 weeks." I said, "Okay." So he did. Well, now I got my ace, whoever it might have not been Alex, but somebody that was pretty good. And we got the lead. And the umpire comes down to me, and you've probably seen this and witnessed this when you're coaching. You got some little cocky official, and he comes up
There's
to you.
There's a lot of them.
Hey, Joe, there's not going to be any hand checking, Joe. We're not going to allow for that, So he's telling you ahead of time that you're going to have to watch out because we're not going to let anything go by. Right. Okay? Right. So he comes strutting down toward me. And he says, "It's going to rain. There's a big front coming. It's coming fast. and I'm going to put the tarp on. And I'm going, we're ahead. That's a good deal. So I I said, okay, turn and walk back. Got down to third base. I used to like to lean over a little bit and put my hands on my knees, and I'm down there, and I look up and I see raindrops. Not heavy, but starting.
Yeah.
And I look down at him. He looks down at me, takes his mask and snaps it on his face and said, play ball. And it started raining and rained us out.
No.
It rained us out. And so the next night we got to play a doubleheader. So I've gotten and that play at second base cost us a run. Plus the ball was thrown away at first, and the guy would have been on second. Our other guy would have been anyway. So I lost it. And I'm sorry that I won't repeat what I said, but I lost it. And he got ready to throw me out. And he took his arm and he got his arm halfway up, and I grabbed his arm and I said, I'm not done yet. You can throw me, but I'm not done yet.
That's great.
I was so frustrated. So finally he ran me out. The next day, Jimmy Bragan, who's the president of the league, and he played a lot of baseball with the Braves, and he calls me up. Jimmy Bragan here. He's from down south.
Yeah.
And I said, Jimmy, yeah, I expected I was going to get a call from you. He said, yeah, you can't touch them boys in blue. And I said, I know that. He said, but I'll tell you what. Minch up there been telling me you've been getting the wrong end of the deal for 3 days. I said, yeah, you're right. Minch is being fair. And he owns the other team. And so he said, well, what do you think? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I got to fine you and suspend you. I said, 1 day. He said, that's good with me.
Oh, wow.
So that was how it worked out. But that's the only time I really lost it. I got kicked a couple times, but only, because I should have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, I think we're going to take another short break. When we come back, one of the questions I want you to answer or talk about is when you went back into coaching, you were remarried, I believe.
Yes, sir.
And so I want to talk about the wife's perspective of
right.
coaching. Because
how'd she deal with it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So we'll talk about that when we come back.
All right.